Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into San Francisco's Mission District. We're going to unpack its complex history, its incredibly vibrant culture, and the really intense transformations it's been going through recently. Now, if you've ever walked down these streets, you know the Mission just pulses with art, music, and this undeniable community spirit. But today, using data and historical context straight from our sources, we are looking at the powerful economic forces that are fundamentally reshaping this iconic neighborhood.
I want to start by hitting you right out of the gate with a staggering number, 14,000. Since the year 2001, more than 14,000 Latinx residents have been displaced from the Mission District. That is a massive demographic shift for just one single neighborhood. In fact, projections from 2015 even suggested that the Latino population there could drop to just 31% by 2025.
And really, that brings us to the big question driving our entire explainer today. Why did 14,000 Latinx residents leave the Mission? This isn't just some simple story of folks deciding to pack up and move to the suburbs. It's a profound mystery sitting right at the intersection of cultural desirability and relentless real estate economics. To understand why so many people left, we first have to understand what they built and why this specific plot of land became so incredibly valuable.
Part 1. Heart of Latino Culture.
So, before we get into the economic displacement, we need to establish exactly what's at stake here. The Mission has this deeply layered history. It's been home to so many different groups, from the indigenous Yelamu and Ohlone people, to Spanish missionaries, to Irish and Italian immigrants. But by the 1950s, right after World War II, the area really transitioned into a vibrant Latino barrio. And this ultimately culminated in a massive cultural explosion in the 1970s. The visual proof of this renaissance? It isn't locked away in some museum. It's literally painted right onto the neighborhood. There are over 700 murals in the Mission, in places like Balmy Alley, painted by groups like the Mujeres Muralistas, protesting political intervention and praising indigenous heritage.
And right at the center of all this is 24th Street, or Calle 24, which really became the epicenter of Latino culture in San Francisco. I mean, imagine walking down the block and smelling fresh tortillas from La Palma Mexicatessen, which has been pressing them daily since 1953, or grabbing traditional pan dulce from La Victoria, open since 1951. You've also got the Brava Theater championing Latina stories, and newer additions like Medicine for Nightmares, which is a Chicano-owned bookstore, continuing the neighborhood's incredible literary legacy. This isn't a manufactured tourist trap. It's a living, breathing cultural hub.
Part 2. The dot-com boom squeeze. But what happens when a neighborhood becomes, well, almost too culturally desirable? At the exact same moment, a massive new industry is born right next door. Notice the blue bars representing the Mission versus the red bars for San Francisco as a whole. You can see how the tech boom dramatically accelerated median income in the area starting around 1990, just rocketing upward through 2000 and into 2013. Because the neighborhood had high-density cultural richness and great transit, it became a magnet for high-income tech employees. And as that new money flooded in, it completely flipped the economic landscape, devaluing traditional industrial spaces and sending the cost of living through the roof.
And here is where we see the direct human cost of that economic spike. Look at the blue bar representing the Hispanic and Latino population. It peaked at 50% of the neighborhood in 1990 and 2000, but then look at 2013. It dropped significantly down to 38%, while the red bar, the white population, surges to 43%. This is the exact moment those 14,000 residents begin to disappear from the data.
To really grasp the pressure cooker that caused that demographic drop, you've got to look at the housing supply. By the year 2000, at the absolute peak of the dot-com boom, the housing vacancy rate in the Mission hit an extreme low. It plummeted to just 3%. 3%! This created a hyper-competitive market where demand vastly outstripped supply, putting immense upward pressure on rents and making the land incredibly lucrative for developers. So how did developers actually capitalize on this frenzy? Well, one major way was through a policy mechanism known as the live/work loophole. Over in the Northeast Mission Industrial Zone, developers realized they could legally convert industrial land into high-end residential live/work loft spaces. And because of how the ordinance was written, these conversions didn't even require public hearings. Imagine your neighborhood fundamentally changing overnight, and you basically have zero say in the matter. These conversions proceeded completely unchecked for a long time, displacing local blue-collar jobs and replacing them with expensive housing geared directly toward the new tech workforce.
But you know, behind all these zoning laws and economic charts are real people watching their community transform. I want to share a quote from Larissa Petroncelli, a small business owner in the area, because it really humanizes the data. She says, This is what exclusion looks like, and what ethnic replacement looks like in modern times. Our sources show this is an incredibly common sentiment among longtime locals who felt those intense economic pressures squeezing working-class families right out of the neighborhood they built.
Part 3. The Eviction Crisis.
Now, economic pressure is one thing, right? But how do 14,000 people actually get physically removed from their homes? The answer lies in a very specific legal tool called the Ellis Act. Passed in 1985, this California state law allows landlords to evict tenants building-wide, regardless of whether those tenants have paid rent on time or done anything wrong at all. The landlord simply has to declare they're taking the property off the rental market entirely. In a hyper-competitive area like the Mission, this became a favorite loophole for owners looking to exit the rental business, clear out rent-controlled tenants, and convert their buildings into highly profitable market-rate condos.
And the data backs this up in a pretty dramatic way. Notice the blue bars representing Ellis Act evictions from 2001 to 2013. The sources indicate that during this period, the Mission District experienced the highest number of Ellis Act and no-fault evictions in all of San Francisco. Between 2009 and 2013 alone, it continued to hold the top spot for these evictions citywide. This was the actual, physical mechanism that turned economic pressure into real displacement.
Naturally, the community reaction to this ongoing process was intense. It actually birthed the phrase La muerte de la misión, meaning the death of the mission. According to our sources, community activists coined this phrase in response to a highly contested proposal for a 10-story, mostly market-rate development over at 2588 Mission Street. For many residents, projects like that one, projects that replace older infrastructure with units priced way out of reach for working-class locals, symbolize the end of the neighborhood's traditional identity.
Part 4. The Fight for Survival. But it is absolutely crucial to note that the neighborhood didn't just passively accept these changes. Not at all. There is a long, highly organized history of resistance and tenant protection advocacy here. That cultural explosion of the 70s really laid the groundwork for community pride. By 1999, the Calle 24 Merchants Association was formed specifically to preserve Latino cultural continuity against gentrification. Then, in the early 2000s, the Mission Anti-Displacement Coalition fought back hard against those live-work loft conversions, and they actually successfully lobbied for a 2-year moratorium on market-rate housing. And today, organizations like MEDA and the Plaza 16 Coalition are still out there demanding affordable housing and fighting to stabilize the neighborhood.
Despite the staggering loss of 14,000 neighbors, there's just this profound resilience in the Mission. I want to read this powerful statement from Josiah Lewis Alderete, the owner of the Medicine for Nightmares bookstore. He says, "The gentrification and displacement didn't stop the Mission from being the Mission. We're still here. The murals are still up, the legacy businesses are still pressing tortillas, and the community is still fighting every day to preserve its identity." Which leaves us with a pretty massive question. We've seen exactly why those 14,000 residents left. It was this perfect storm of a tech-fueled economic boom, a 3% housing vacancy rate, and legal mechanisms like the Ellis Act. But looking forward, can the Mission's culture actually survive its own desirability? It's a classic story of urban evolution caught between a rich, vibrant history and relentless market forces. So what do you think happens when a neighborhood's culture becomes its most displaceable asset? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.